Alrighty, so we're doing the little game critique right now, and I figured I'd just do a basic voiceover recording, capturing the gameplay, and what I've actually done is I completed the game on one run, and then I'm starting from a new one, because I kind of wanted to have the intro playing in the background to show some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. And I guess starting off, the main thing would be I'd kind of separate my pros and cons as like personal pros, and then like objective pros, and then personal cons and objective cons, right? Like, personal pro would be I love some of the design. Personally, I'm actually not a fan of like isometrics or top-downs, pixel sprite stuff, right? But this game, I think it does a good job even with that sort of like, I guess, limited like detail that you have with this kind of like resolution and isometric. All the environments feel very different, and like the inside of buildings feel very different, and it does a good job of having an actual like story to it as well. And it's called Moonlighter, right? It's essentially a roguelite in a way. Like you could definitely like compare it to something like Hades. Maybe not exactly like Risk and Rain and stuff like that, right? But more in the style of Hades, where it's got that top down and that fast combat. Like another thing I really love is it doubles your jump as your roll all in one button, and you get iframes during that, so it feels a little bit like a Souls-like. And personally, I'm also not a huge fan of roguelites or roguelikes, which is kind of why I picked it, because I wanted to pick something that I don't normally play. That way I could kind of come into it and everything would be more fresh, and I wouldn't compare it as much. And the only real thing I could compare it to mainly was Hades, right? And it's just been good. The gameplay, I would say, like for cons, the gameplay variation isn't the best. Like the enemy types don't feel as varied as you might want to expect. You know, it feels like a bit of the same quite consistently. And also, I just don't like the roguelite aspect. It's got this system basically where as you go through, and there's that roll that I was saying that doubles. It's got the system where as you go through and everything, you can spend in order to return from whatever run you're doing. But the longer you spend in a run, the more things you have, the more it costs, right? So you want to continue your run because you want more stuff to sell. The longer you continue your run, the less stuff you have to come back and put on the table and sell, because you're essentially a merchant, right? Like you're running your store and everything. But the combat feels, you know, nice and good, right? Pretty much your standard. And there's some actual fun characters, which I was like definitely surprised by. And there's a lot of like little references, like stuff to Binding of Isaac, you know, another similar style of game. And if you notice in this opening scene, when he gives you that very basic sword and shield, he tells you, it's dangerous to go alone, take this, you know, that classic reference. And I'd say it definitely has a lot of like style and appreciation put into it. And I think because of that, it has, you know, some extra like love behind it. It makes it a little more endearing as you play through it. Another thing that I don't love, which is what we're bringing up right now, and part of why I was going through the tutorial, because it'll walk through everything basically for me, that inventory management is not the greatest. Whenever you pick stuff up out of a chest, it generates similar like a Minecraft like chest screen, right, where you have all these slots, and it'll kind of randomly generate where they're set in the slots. And you can just hit L1 and pick up everything like a quick move, but that quick move, you've got separated slots for on-person attachment at the top, and then backpack attachment. And you don't always want to have stuff actually on person, because you want to fill it with like specific consumables and throwable items and stuff like that. And when you do that quick move, you can end up with stuff like fabric, which is going to be used way later for like crafting and stuff, and has no reason to be in the on-person inventory and should be in backpack. But in order to move stuff like that, you have to go bop, 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 and that just takes a little too long. I'd say overall, like, it's got a lot of charm. One thing I like about it more than regular roguelites is there is an actual concrete ending. I think that's really good too. It gives a better sense of like triumph and like real progression, right? And the combat does feel extremely like tight and good, definitely. The only problem that you really run into is it doesn't feel like there's enough weapons, right? Like you have a spear, sword, and like heavy weapon and hammer, right? And it's like heavy weapons like axe. And that's good, but they feel pretty much the same despite like basic animation changes and time changes on how long you attack. Overall, like I guess I'd give it like a 7.5 out of 10. Um, and it definitely gave me more appreciation for a style of game that I don't normally play.